Are you okay if I take off my mask?
Oh, yes, yes.
Yes.
It'll be much better.
Okay. It is hard to communicate with it. Dear friends, just a word of caution. The sun is coming in and out. If you find yourself feeling at all lightheaded or whatever, don't be a starka. Find a place to sit down. Go back to your car. Do whatever you need to be comfortable. It's all fine. And if you need, there's more room under the tent if you want to move under a bit, so that you can be in the shade. We gathered this morning.
Can they make it louder?
Bart, can it be a bit louder?
It's pretty loud. It's pretty loud.
Jimmy, maybe we could point it this way a bit. Let's see. That might be better. Okay. We gathered this morning to remember and to celebrate the life of one who filled our world with her love, her goodness, her extraordinary spirit, and outstanding example. In humility and gratitude, we turn to the wisdom of our tradition for guidance, for comfort, and for understanding. Throughout the centuries, whenever our people felt lost, confused, adrift, they would recite words of songs. One of the favorites was Psalm 121, Esainai el Heharim, I lift my eyes to the mountains. What is the source of my help? My help comes from God, maker of heaven and of earth. Esainai el Heharim, me'ayin, me'ayin, Yavo Esri, Esainai el Heharim, me'ayin, me'ayin, Yavo Esri, Esri, me'im Adonai, Osei Shamayim Varetz, Esri, me'im Adonai, Osei Shamayim Varetz, Esainai el Heharim, me'ayin, me'ayin, Yavo Esri. Adonai, what are we that you have regard for us? What are we that you are mindful of us? We are like a breath. Our days are like a passing shadow. We come and go like grass, which in the morning shoots up renewed, and in the evening fades and withers. You cause us to turn to dust, saying, Return, O mortal creatures. Would that we were wise, that we understood whither we are going. For when we die, we carry nothing away. Our glory does not accompany us. Mark the wholehearted, and behold the upright. They shall have peace. For those of you for whom the 23rd Psalm is familiar, I invite you to join with me in its recitation. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. When I die, remember me with a smile and laughter. If thoughts of me provoke no love, only sadness and tears, I ask that I be soon forgotten. Give what's left of me away to children and old ones who wait to die. And if you must cry, cry for your brother or a sister who walks in grief beside you. And when you need me, put your arms around anyone and give them what you need to give to me. You can love me most by letting love live within the circle of your arms, embracing the frightened ones. Love doesn't die. People do. So when all that's left of me is love, give me away. My dear Jimmy, Barbara, Roger, Katie, dear Pam, Jeffrey, dear grandchildren, great-grandchildren, dear family, friends. And now, the end is near. And so I face the final curtain. My friend, I'll say it clear. I'll state my case, of which I'm certain. I've lived a life that's full. I traveled each and every highway, and more, much more than this. I did it my way. It came as a surprise to no one who loved her as their mother, grandmother, great-grandmother, aunt, cousin, or very close friend, that Rita Heller adored Frank Sinatra and requested that one of his signature songs, My Way, be included in her funeral. As Evan observed, she was feisty and stubborn, and thank goodness she passed those qualities on to her grandchildren and great-grandchildren. She was the lightning defying, tennis into her 80s playing, Maj Maven dominating, meticulously cooking, cleaning, creating, sewing, dressed, coiffed, and perfectly turned out modeling of a person who knew what she wanted, knew how to pursue it, and always and only despite the outcome, did it her way. As Carrie will always remember, that was the joy of her. That was the quintessential nanny, the person every grandchild knew as unique, infinitely loving, a perfectionist in all things, an endless source of sleepovers, French toast, Melba toast, mondo bread, and matzo ball soup. She did it her way, with style and flair, with class and beauty, with a sense of fun, of adventure, of possibility. She was a character. She was a personality. She was a force. She did it her way. Her way began July 29th, 1924, on East 99th Street in the close-knit, upwardly mobile, largely immigrant neighborhood of Glenville. She was the youngest of Anna and Peter Albert's 3 children. Even though Sister Hilda was older than Rita by 6 years, and Brother Jerry was next, Hilda and Rita were exceedingly close as children and maintained their closeness until Hilda's untimely death. In fact, all 3 siblings maintained a lifelong closeness, perhaps nurtured by Anna and Peter's big white house on Toland in Shaker Heights, where, as young married couples, Hilda and Mark Stern, with their children Gail and Stephen, lived on the first floor with their grandparents Anna and Peter, Jerry and Gloria lived on the second floor with their son, Jeffrey. And Rita and Milt lived on the third floor with Jim, Roger, and Pam to complete the family compound. Rita spoke nostalgically and affectionately of her childhood years when she and Hilda did just about everything together, including traveling on the streetcar in custom-made suits and hats created by their exceedingly talented mother. Where Rita was bold and outgoing, Hilda was shy, so that it fell to Rita to return items from their shopping expeditions, if necessary, and to protect her sister. Rita's concern and compassion extended into their adult years, and she was by Hilda's side to help her battle the devastating cancer that claimed her life some 60 years ago. In the aftermath of their tragic loss, Rita became a surrogate mother to her niece and nephew, Gail and Stephen. Rita developed very close bonds of love and support with Stephen while he was alive, and to her very last day on this earth with Gail, who is sending her love from Israel, where her grandson Hudson is celebrating becoming a bar mitzvah. As a young child, Rita was absolutely adorable, with the soup bowl haircut of the late 1920s and 30s. For some reason, she articulated the fiction that I wasn't wanted, I was a mistake. It is hard to reconcile that notion with the bold, outgoing, social, effervescent, energetic, competent, confident, and charismatic person who always did it my way. From her earliest days at Miles Standish Grade School to Glenville High, and then her senior year at Shaker, Rita had numerous friends, some of whom became lifelong. She played piano, but rarely for others, and she sewed beautifully, stylishly, meticulously, just as her mother, Anna, had. She had an artist's eye and talent. She loved fabrics, loved to lay them out on the dining room table and cut them into pieces for an outfit, frequently without using a pattern to guide her. She taught Pam how to create something out of nothing, a principle that has informed all of Pam's artistic work. At that dining room table, she gave Pam the freedom to explore and to experiment. She also taught Roger how to sew his own tight pants. Regrets? I've had a few, but then again, too few to mention. I did what I had to do and saw it through without exemption. I planned each charted course, each careful step along the byway, and more, much more than this. I did it my way. She had a fascination with clocks and watches, and loved to take them apart and put them back together again. No one is quite sure whether it was the watches or time itself that captured her interest. She was a person who was always on time and always wanted to know what time it was. How that may have translated into figuring out how timekeeping devices worked is somewhat mysterious. She was clearly a person who valued and appreciated time and made every moment count. With her volunteering, her creative talents, her work, her interests, her many and varied activities, her athletic pursuits, and especially her relationships with friends, with strangers and acquaintances who quickly became friends, and most of all, beyond all, and above all, with her beloved family. From her Eastern European immigrant parents and grandparents and family in Philadelphia where they had immigrated, to her siblings and their families, to her aunt and uncles, her dear nieces and nephews, and her cousins. Somehow, she always had time for every one of us and everything to which she devoted her seemingly inexhaustible energy dynamism, and passion. Rita Heller didn't just make every moment count. She didn't just embrace this life and everything in it with all the fervor and enthusiasm of her vital, powerful, indomitable presence. She ate it up and spit it out. She faced it all, and she stood tall and did it her way. Her way was guided by her always open heart as she cared for the youngest members of our community through her involvement with True Sisters, as she literally reached out her hand to the sick as she pushed the magazine cart from room to room at Mount Sinai Hospital, as she supported the State of Israel through her work with Hadassah, and as she expressed her devotion to Jewish life and faith at Park Synagogue, where she raised her children, celebrated Shabbat and the holidays, as well as important life cycle moments in her family's life. Interestingly, Rita's first work experience after graduating from Shaker was as a switchboard operator for the Jewish Federation of Los Angeles. In attempting to fulfill her in-laws' dream of having their family all living in California, she and Milt moved there shortly after they married on November 14th, 1943. Three times Milt tried to pass the California dental boards, and 3 times missed passing by the slimmest of anti-Semitic manufactured margins. While Milt was driving a truck and studying for the boards, Rita had an opportunity to work for the movie industry. When the interview process threatened to become a Hollywood cliche, however, Rita screamed and bolted out of that situation. It didn't take her long to bolt out of Los Angeles altogether, and before Milt was ready to leave, Rita was frustrated and lonely and went home to Cleveland without him. Yes, there were times, I'm sure you know, when I bit off more than I could chew. But through it all, when there was doubt, I ate it up and spit it out. I faced it all and I stood tall and did it my way. Milt followed her soon after, and despite his wanderlust, they did not leave Cleveland again, except for winters in Naples and recreational travel, which they both greatly enjoyed, as they traveled to Europe, took cruises, went to Mexico and other delightful destinations. After Milt passed away, Rita continued to travel with friends to Scandinavia, Spain, an elder hospital in Santa Fe. She had a wonderfully independent spirit, a my-way approach to life that sustained her and inspired her loved ones. Early in her marriage, she worked for the May Company and a jewelry store. Some years later, she found her true place at the Ray Phillips dress shop. Rita had exquisite taste, style, a flair for fashion, and for finding the exact right outfit for the person. In addition, with her meticulous standards of perfection and her organized way of doing anything, her customers loved her and relied on her. Both granddaughters Carrie and Darcy's fondest memories of their nanny, who was not, according to Darcy, like a typical grandma, was exploring Nanny's massive closet, wardrobe, jewelry, and makeup collection. I will always envision my beautiful Nanny dressed to the nines, with the smallest dainty feet, makeup impeccable, bright pink lipstick, nails and hair done, with an impending hug. In fact, one time while spending an afternoon together in Chagrin Falls, no one could believe that she was my grandmother. Carrie loved to watch her get ready in the morning, picking out her clothes, sitting at her makeup table. Evan used to say to Rita, "Carrie can't leave the house without her lipstick because of you." You will hear from some of the other grandchildren in just a few moments, but the great fun of sleepovers is a common theme, with vintage Barbie dolls and Milano cookies, with games of parcheesi and plenty of food. Always food, the special food she had ready or would prepare for them. In addition to the French toast and Melba toast, she was renowned for her Red Devil chocolate cake. Rita had hundreds of recipes written out longhand that she kept perfectly organized and cataloged in her recipe boxes. She was an amazing chef. She could make anything. Her home was always open and always ready to serve one visiting grandchild or a crowd of friends and family. She was always ready to entertain or to celebrate birthdays, anniversaries, graduations, the Jewish holidays with their special foods. As she did with fabric and design, so she did with food. Rita made magic with her hands and her secret ingredient, her heart. She was more beautiful on the inside than she was on the outside, and that was a constant source of wonder to her loved ones, especially Milt. Rita's brother Jerry was at the Reserve Dental School with Milt and brought him home for a meal. Both Milt and Rita were extremely popular with the opposite sex, but once they met, they only had eyes for each other. For an all too brief 52 years, they walked hand in hand as lovers, partners, sweethearts, friends. Together they welcomed the three greatest blessings of their lives, Jimmy, Roger, and Pam. Rita was an always encouraging and loving mother, but had certain expectations and standards for her children. She took great pride in their growth as individuals and as professionals. And she was delighted when Jimmy found his Barbara, Roger married Katie, and Pam brought Jeffrey Steinberg into the family. Rita welcomed her children's spouses as children of her heart, never as children-in-law. As loving and generous as she was before her grandchildren came into the world. The miraculous arrival of them all filled her with sheer joy, a joy that each of them felt when they were with her, as Ryan, Carrie, Darcy, Jessica, Zichronah Livracha, Jonathan, Cassie, Tessa, and Anna came into the family and into her heart. On the occasion of her 90th birthday, Ryan offered a toast on behalf of all the grandchildren. Sort of. Thanks for being my nanny. I'm the oldest grandchild. You're first. I started calling you Nanny, so you are my nanny, and will always be my nanny. Thank you for making me French toast anytime I slept over growing up, and letting me stay up late to watch TV on the black and white checkered couch. Thanks for being my nanny. Thank you for taking me to Florida for a week when I was 9, and taking me to the beach to make a boat out of the sand, and teaching me how to play tennis, and making me French toast every morning. Did I already say that? Thanks for being my nanny. Thank you for showing me how not to cook salmon in the dishwasher. You can ask the family about that story. Thank you for all the times you made me Melba toast and Mondo bread. Thank you for always having Apple Jacks cereal when I was around. 2 years past the expiration date was probably not a good thing. Thanks for being my nanny. Thank you for never forgetting my birthday. Thank you for all of the family dinners on Bryden, or the Village, or Four Seasons. Thank you for being my nanny. As joyful as she was with the arrival of each grandchild, Rita knew how fortunate she was to know her great-grandchildren, as Ryan married Jen and brought Jacob and then Jordan into the family. As an aside, Jen has the same birthday as Rita. as Carrie and Evan joyfully welcomed Ella, Mason, and Sophie. Our thoughts at this moment are with Ella as we pray for her increasing strength and can imagine Rita, even now, demanding of the heavenly hosts that they guard and protect her. Rita rejoiced when Darcy found her errand and brought Dylan and Caleb into the family and into Rita's heart, which swelled even more as John and Leanne welcomed Maddox and Jessica, as Cassidy and Jay had Emmy, and as Tessa and Drew brought the youngest great-grandchild into the family, 10-month-old Cameron, who has Anna and Sean's 22-month-old Quentin to look up to. If I am not mistaken, and please correct me if I am, the current count of Rita's great-grandchildren is an even dozen. You can count it up. Tell me I'm wrong. That's what I came to. Her 98 years, reached just 2 weeks ago, have yielded a remarkable legacy of family and relationships. To think she did all that, and may we say, not in a shy way. Oh no, not her. She did it her way. Not in a shy way. She had a myriad of friends and was always making more wherever she went, whatever she was doing. Playing golf or tennis, playing canasta, bridge, or her greatest card passion, Maj. Founding the Ski Easy Water Ski School with professional water skier Carlos Mendoza, whom she and Milt met on one of their trips to Acapulco. She brought her organization and meticulous attention to detail to Milt's more fanciful flights of imagination and helped bring them to reality. In the aftermath of Milt's passing, Rita did not slow down and did not abandon any of her passions or interests. She did, however, find love again and a wonderful companion, as Pam recounted her mother's story. One day, I was in the parking garage where I saw a man carrying a tool bag. It looked so clean and everything in it was neatly organized. Man after her own heart. I had seen him before, but this time I asked him where he was going with the bag. He answered that he was working on a project for Habitat for Humanity. Herb, Har, and my mom became great companions, spending 6 nights a week together. He would go from his 3rd floor apartment up to Rita's on the 5th floor. Rita would stir up dinner for them. They loved to watch movies that Herb would carefully select from the library. Frequently, they would go out to dinner, always looking for a unique place to go. Rita cherished her relationship with Herb. I've loved, I've laughed and cried. I've had my share of losing, and now, as tears subside, I find it all so amusing. To think I did all that, and may I say, not in a shy way. Oh no, not me. I did it my way. Darcy reflected on her most recent years. I assisted Nanny in her move from her Beechwood apartment to Stone Gardens. My task was to help her go through her clothes, pack them up, and take her to her new place. Oh, sure, like that was a simple task. I literally was pulling out one sweater or top at a time from her closet, holding it up for her to decide if she wanted it in the move, and then packing it up. Nanny wasn't able to let anything go. Everything had to come with her. I couldn't blame her. Her collection of colorful items made you feel warm. And more, these items encapsulated her as well. She was full of energy, warmth, hugs, and brightness. And I will always hold these memories close to my heart. I won't be able to pass a bag of Milano cookies in the store without thinking of my sleepovers. A dollar store visit will trigger memories of her sending us on a quick shopping trip. My future manicures and pedicures will bring a giggle, thinking of Nanny's small feet and hands that held her many, many purses. My Nanny was a beautiful original, and she wasn't afraid to stand out, and she will continue to shine in the hearts of our family forever. She was never able to find a Maj group at Stone Gardens that did it her way. Maj maven that she was, but she made friends and took advantage of the life offered to her. She was a talented storyteller who continued to draw people to her with her warmth, her interest, her attentiveness, and ability to listen to another. She also had great joy in her family's attentiveness and love. And now, the end is near, and so I face the final curtain. My friend, I'll say it clear, I'll state my case, of which I'm certain. I've lived a life that's full. I traveled each and every highway, and more, much more than this. I did it my way. Her family maintains that she was touched by God. She certainly made each of us feel stronger, brighter, happier, more secure, more confident, more engaged, and more loving. She has been touched by God once again, and it is now our sacred responsibility to live up to her high standards, her vision, and her understanding of who we are and who we still might be. Zichronah livracha. May the memory of our beloved Rita Heller, the inimitable personality who did it her way, be always for blessing. And let us say, Amen. It is a fearful thing to love what death can touch. A fearful thing to love, hope, dream, to be. To be and oh, to lose a thing for fools this, and a holy thing to love. For your life has lived in me, your laugh once lifted me, your word was gift to me. To remember this brings painful joy. 'Tis a human thing, love, a holy thing, to love what death has touched. I call now on members of the family to offer their reflections, and let me just acknowledge that if you need to sit, you may sit on the monument. We are here for a sacred purpose, and if you need to, don't hesitate. On the stones, on the grass, whatever you need.
Good morning, everyone. If you don't know me, my name is John Heller.
And they want you to
It's closer.
You know what? Let me just, I want to make sure this is still working.
Sure.
The recording just dropped. Could you come check that it's still working? I'm sorry. But I don't see anything happening. So I just can't tell.
Oh, it did. Shut off.
Okay.
My name's John Heller, son of Roger and Katie, and Rita's grandson. Can you hear me okay?
Talk really quick.
All right, thanks.
Talk a little louder.
Okay.
You want to swallow
Closely
it.
and louder.
Swallow
All right. Growing up, Nanny was a quintessential grandmother in so many ways. She was there for birthdays, graduations, and holidays. She gave great hugs and kisses on the cheek, whose lipstick always left an impression. You can still smell that lipstick sometimes. She had her classic food dishes. I feel this is a common theme already today. Matzo ball soup, of course. Noodle kugel, which I never quite understood, but I think she made a good one anyway. An odd-looking pink Jell-O mousse type thing that I absolutely loved and could eat cups full of. And a sweet type of beef sausage, which she would cook extras of and carefully wrap and place in my carry-on back to college, which led to some interesting TSA conversations, but it was well worth it. She always asked and was generally interested in my life, my wife's life, my kids' lives, and this never changed, whether it was me explaining computer programming to her when I was 10, or talking about the Thai martial art I've been practicing when I saw her just a few weeks ago. But my absolute favorite memory of Nanny was when I got to know her more as a person rather than just my grandmother. When I was around 13, she took me to dinner for my birthday in Little Italy, just me and her. And I was super nervous because what was I going to tell Nanny about myself for 2 hours straight? I'd never done this before. So I decided to do something different, and I asked her about her life instead. And it was fascinating hearing stories firsthand that I had never heard before, or only heard vague descriptions of from my dad. Not surprisingly, several of these stories were about my dad. I knew these were going to be serious stories because Nanny did this thing that many of you might recognize. She would reach across the table and then loosely grab my hands and gently shake it, and her bracelets would be dangling, and start the sentence and look deeply into my eyes and say, "Now Johnny." And I just recall this so well with her. She told me about the time that my dad, when he was a teenager, rode on the roof of a car and flew off it onto the street. You know, Nanny was always very serious with me about taking risks, like, for example, venturing outside without proper layers when it was below 50 degrees, or the great dangers of salt. And now, hearing these stories, I started to understand where some of this risk aversion might have come from. I will miss Nanny very dearly, but I feel incredibly, incredibly lucky to have had her in my life as my grandmother.
Hi, I'm Tessa Hannah. I'm Roger and Katie's youngest child. I'm going to be speaking for myself and my sister Cassidy. So, like I said, as many of you know, I'm the youngest grandchild of Nanny's, and for a lot of kids that can make you feel kind of lost and forgotten in the shuffle, but Nanny never made me feel that way. She always made me feel special and loved and important. And she was my biggest champion and my biggest fan, just like she was with all of her children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. As we all know, Nanny knew everyone. So when we'd be out at Jack's Deli, and many, many people would come up to the table, and she'd always be like, "This is my granddaughter Tessa, she's a lawyer." We also always bonded over clothes and jewelry and nails, but our relationship was so much more than that. And as we've heard the word family so many times today, Nanny set such a good example for what it means to be a family. I think that was very evident in her final years with how devoted her children and grandchildren remained to her. And as I stand here today looking at the family that's here that she created and the family that couldn't be here, I see a group of smart and successful and loving people with their own beautiful families, and I think we owe a lot of that to Nanny. I'm so thankful that she got to meet and spend time with my baby Cameron, who we've all heard here today. She got to hug him and snuggle him and kiss him, and he gave her the biggest smiles, and I feel so lucky for that. And I feel lucky to call Nanny my grandma, and I'm going to cherish her memory forever. And then this is from Cassidy, who's Roger and Katie's middle child out in Colorado. So, has anyone found the stash of Fountain of Youth water that Nanny kept squirreled away for all these years? If not, I would continue checking her closets. Perhaps it is in the pockets of those faux fur stoles that she tried to repeatedly pass down to me, and probably to several of my cousins as well. I recall a conversation we had over her Mandel bread a few years ago where I politely tried to decline. I know they are fake, but it still won't go over well in Boulder. I am a vegetarian, remember? But Nanny always wanted to make sure I was warm, well-fed, and healthy. She shared her love through food, stories, and lipstick-smeared kisses that I never really minded because they were like a badge of endearment. I remember sleepovers at her house, watching movies in her giant bed with my sister and cousin, playing board games, feeding ducks at the lake, and waking up to challah French toast for breakfast with powdered sugar. I would leave Passover Seders with a warmth that enveloped me, partially from the matzah balls that no one has ever or will ever replicate in texture, but partially from a feeling of connection, like I had filled my cup from this deep well of tradition, of which she seemed to be the bearer, the matriarch, the holder of a vast trove of histories and heritage. I feel so fortunate that she got to meet and know our daughter Amelia, her 9th great-grandchild. Upon meeting her as an infant, Emmy sat in her lap smiling and looked directly into her face while Nanny exclaimed, "Oh, she's gorgeous," and then, "I want to go and buy her clothes and toys." On one of our last visits with her, she did indeed give her a lovely baby doll that she had picked out. She also fretted over whether Amelia was dressed warmly enough in a sweater and a hat for the 65-degree day. But that was just her intense way of expressing affection and care. Maybe it's this boundless love for tradition and devotion to family, this stubborn and relentless spirit, this grace and boldness to speak her mind. This was her true fountain of youth. This was the source of the spark and glow and the gleam in her eye that everyone saw when they wondered with astonishment that she can't possibly be in her 90s. This was the radiating warmth and joy that all who had the pleasure of knowing her spoke of, and that we as her family will all miss so deeply in her absence. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Anna, my grandmother's only daughter's daughter. My son Quentin's favorite movie is Disney's Moana. In it, an adventurous Hawaiian girl sets out on a daring mission to save her people and her home. Before Moana leaves, her grandmother Tala shares these words of wisdom with her. Remember, you may hear a voice inside, and if the voice starts to whisper, to follow the farthest star. Moana, that voice inside you is who you are. Every time I hear Grandma Tala sing these words to Moana, I'm reminded of my grandmother Rita, Nanny, the glamorous, loving, stubborn, incredibly extroverted and opinionated matriarch of our family, who helped me see who I was and who I am. When I was little, I used to stand next to Nanny, watching as she carefully applied her makeup. Another theme we've heard today. Foundation, eyeliner, eyeshadow, blush, mascara, lip liner, lipstick, powder on top. Gently, gracefully, she'd glide her hands over her beautifully moisturized skin while gazing at her reflection in a brightly lit mirror, occasionally winking at me. I was in awe as she made her makeup brushes dance across her face. What a collection she had. It was perfectly organized, with a spot for every tube, balm, cream, pencil, and brush. Every item had its place nestled in her makeup table. Being the daughter of artists, it was much more common for me to see paint on my mother's hands than nail polish. Glamour simply wasn't a part of our lives. Instead, I'd watch my mom pour cement into molds, dirty up her fingers with pastels, build masterpieces out of wood and wire, feathers, photographs, and thread. The two most significant women in my life, as different as they sometimes seem to be, they were both artists in their own way. As I got a little older, I found myself leaning towards my grandmother's ways. My mom will tell anybody who asks how I always had a place for everything, meticulously organized. And makeup, I couldn't get enough of it. One time I even stole makeup from Nanny because I so desperately wanted to try it and be like her. My mom made me apologize and give it back, to which Nanny lovingly accepted my apology and then showed me how to put on mascara. My grandmother and her sense of style and preparedness made a huge impression on me. She was always dressed to the nines with matching outfits and perfectly stocked handbags filled with gum and tissues and Band-Aids and safety pins. Nanny was the person who always brought her own popcorn to the movies, always had an extra box of Girl Scout cookies stuffed away in her pantry, and she'd always bake an extra cinnamon bread cake or some other dessert if the Jewish holiday we were celebrating happened to fall close to the birthday of one of us grandkids. Nanny showed me what it means to unwaveringly, wholeheartedly, purely listen to the voice inside of you that tells you who you are and to fully be that person. She lived her life out loud, bringing anybody and everybody who would listen along for the ride. Nanny showed me what it meant to be glamorous, to have a joy for the finer things in life, while also spotting a great deal. You'd never know what you'd find on the shelves at the dollar store. When I look at who I am today, my passion and drive, my taste for nice things, how excited I get about a good sale, my need to be organized and over-prepared, even the shape of my face and the shape of my son's face, I know exactly where it comes from. I could practically hear Nanny singing the words, and if the voice starts to whisper to follow the farthest star, Anna, that voice inside you is who you are. Nanny, I didn't get to say goodbye. Thank you for helping me see and hear who I was, who I am. Thank you for shaping me, for teaching me about beauty and joy, family and love, loyalty and grace. Thank you for the memories, the glamour, the traditions, the laughs, and the makeup. I will never ever forget you. I love you.
I don't know how many of you ever saw my mother cry. Probably not many, because my mother really didn't cry. I cried. I cried for both of us. And this talk right now is pretty difficult for me. So I'm not going to go too far. Sitting with my wife Katie and April of 1987, I was preparing to give a speech at our daughter's funeral, and it's just a few days after she died. And I said to Kate, I said, I can't do this. There's just no way I'm going to be able to do this. She has a drama background. She holds my hand and she says, just say it now, over and over and over and over again. And if you say it long enough, it'll get boring and it won't bring tears. Well, I didn't have a chance to do that. And this long thing I wrote out, I'm not going to say. And I'm standing here today, right now, to speak just totally spontaneously. 45 years of court opening statements and closing statements. I've never been unprepared, but I'm completely unprepared now, on purpose. Also following Anna and John and Tessa and the unbelievable job that the cantor did, there's not a lot left to say except for a few very personal things. I decided I'd write a little punch list of some things, and almost all of it's been discussed. But I just wanted to talk about just a few things. 98 years is a really good life. There's no regrets. I am so happy that my mother had this life. And she was too.
We need medical assistance.
What?
Here, bring her here. Bring her here. She's in the chair right now. Bring her right on the end. Okay, yeah, right here. Sit there.
Did she hit her? Yeah, I don't know.
That's Debbie. I know, yeah. Yeah. Just sit down.
She's holding something. We have her. No.
Do we have any? This is just water already. Here you go. Perfect. Okay, just relax. Sandy, you want to sit? Thank goodness you did. Yeah.
Debbie back there.
Go ahead, Roger.
Okay, right.
So much of our recent memory of my mom is over the last few years, which have been very difficult. And in many ways a reversal of how my mother was for 80 or 90 years before. She's been needy. She's been unable to have her independence. She's been able to offer help to everyone. And it's easy to be mired in that recollection now and have that overtake the memory from the decades and decades before that. And that's the conflict that I've had over these last days thinking about her life. But going through thousands and thousands of pictures brought me around, and my recollection became clear. I want to thank her and my father, who's to her left right here, for the loving relationship that they had, that they showed day after day in all the years that Jimmy and Pam and I were home with them. The love they had for each other and the love my mom had for my dad served as a model for me, with the love I have for my wife Katie. And I'm sure for the love Jim has for Barbara and Pam has for Jeff. And this is really special. I mean, 50-some years of marriage, which wasn't perfect, of course, but 50-some years of marriage to maintain that level of interest in each other, and love for each other, and respect for each other, is incredible. And the three of us know well how lucky we are to have that. Secondly, I want to thank her for the unselfish love she showed in raising Jimmy and Pam and I in that household. Again, I don't want to take for granted that everybody has that luck, to have a mother and a father. My mom kind of ran the household in that way, to serve as an example for us and to give us and inspire us to be able to raise our children in the same way. If there's anything that my mom left for me, it was those two things. Her love for my children, for Tessa, Cassie, John, and Jessica, was incredible. And I want to mention Jessica in particular because Jessica came into our lives without any introduction. Suddenly one day, I announced to my mother and father that I had a girlfriend, and by the way, she had a child. And my mom looked and went, "You're dating somebody with a child? You're ready to take on this kind of responsibility if it gets more serious?" And I went, "You got to meet her." And it was such a tender moment when that happened. And I really appreciated the grace she had in accepting Jess into our family. So just a few other things. My mom and I had a different kind of relationship than Jimmy had with her and Pam, of course. But it had a certain difficult quality to it because I was kind of a difficult kid. I got into trouble, not really serious stuff, some stuff a little more serious. And I can't tell you how accepting my parents were, and especially my mom, for all of that. And it gave me a sense of security and confidence, self-confidence, that affected my whole life. And as Jimmy and I and Pam went forward in life, we had that confidence that she bestowed on us, that boldness that others have mentioned so far, that have served us very well. The only other thing I want to say, because I don't want to take up too much time here, is I want to share a story, and I'm not sharing this to evoke sadness, it's just the opposite. My mom went into hospice about 10 days ago, 12, I don't know, 2 weeks ago. She was, we didn't know, suffering the effects of her second experience with COVID. And the doctor had mentioned when we had her admitted to the hospice house, Western Reserve, that one of the symptoms she was exhibiting, which was confusion and kind of paranoia, was a fairly common symptom in COVID in late elderly people. So she got some medication and things kind of rolled around okay. But my mom was really afraid. I mean, that's the thing that we saw in her that so concerned us, and we thought it was, a sign of getting old and getting close to death. And that kind of moderated it all. And once we were able to speak, my mom and I, because we had to stay out of there for a while because of the COVID, we were able to talk a little, not a lot, because her it was barely audible, and you couldn't understand the words she was saying. But as some of you, my family especially, knows, kind of like my mom, as John described it, I get in people's faces, family members mostly, and make eye contact. I mean, that's just my way, because I think the eye contact is a way to communicate. It's just my way. Probably annoying to some people. By the way, my grandson Cameron is like this. I'm going to see who can hold out that stare longer. I had spoken to my mother about 1.5 years ago, the first time she had COVID. And when she was released from the hospital, she was, by the way, one of the only people from Stone Gardens who survived that first round of COVID in January of 2021. Again, her dogged persistence in life. But when she was released, she came back to her apartment, and she kind of declined in a lot of ways, to our surprise. We thought she'd just bounce right back, and she didn't. And we had to address the reality that she could die. So Jimmy and Pam and I started to talk about arrangements and all of that stuff. And I had to have my talk with my mom about death. I had a similar talk with my father about it. And I looked at her, I got close in her face, and I looked at her, and I said, "Mom, we probably need to talk about death." Something I had never talked to her about, her own death. And she wouldn't look at me. She always looked at me, and, this close. And she just kept diverting her eyes. And it was real clear to me that she didn't want to talk about it. So I said, okay. And that was the end of that until last week. And Mom and I, on Tuesday, the day before she died, I was with her. And that was the last visit she had with anyone before she died. And in the last minutes before I left, I pulled the chair up next to her and took my mask off and got on her face. And she had just spoken to a few people on the phone, or heard a few people on the phone. And I looked at her, and she looked right at me. And I said, Mom, things are going to be okay either way. And she looked at me, and she smiled. And that little glint in her eye. And she said, I know. And I left the room knowing that she understood what was happening. And I can't tell you how much comfort that brought to me. And I wanted to share that, because I think it helps to think about going forward. It helps to think about someone at that age who lives such a long and loving, wonderful life. It helps to think about that. So I'm done. Thank you for coming, everybody.
Being the oldest, I felt I needed to say something, and I really wasn't planning on saying much. But the thing that Cantor Sager addressed, and she talked about everything that my mother wanted to do it her way. The fact of the matter is that in doing it her way, there wasn't a time, there wasn't a day, there wasn't a phone call that my mother would ask about, how am I feeling? How are your friends feeling? Is everybody feeling okay? It wasn't like I could ask how she was doing. It was always about somebody else. Whether it was our grandkids, whether it was an issue that I was going through, or whatever the case may have been, she always asked about how somebody else was feeling. And as she was here today, and she was asking questions, she would simply say to every single one of you, are you feeling okay? Do you have any pain? And through my years, and with the several moves that we made in Beechwood for her, it was very special. And we think of, there's two events that I have to mention in particular that's very special. Number one, Cantor Sager mentioned, I'm losing track of my mind now, but the thing that was so special and what adds to everything is the fact that she did, as Cantor Sager did mention, my mother so much cared about our kids. She didn't know what's been going on at this moment, but it's just incredible that here we are at 11:30 with this funeral at 11:30, and our rather sick granddaughter was being flown from Chicago to Columbus and was landing this morning at 11:30. People have said, and I've heard it from others, about the fact that one life brings another life. Well, in my mother's case, she brought all of our lives. She brought out a sense of deep dedication by my sister for getting the words out, I love you. And she's followed those footsteps in so much of her artwork and sculpture for all these years, and for all the students that she taught. And my brother who I feel has always had a stronger will than mine. I've always felt weaker. My wife Barbara helps me, but Roger just seemed to be always so stable, and it was wonderful with the lives that we had growing up together, and my personality and my drive is because of my mother and also my father. And I just want to thank you all for being here, and I just hope, again, talking as if it was my mother, I hope you're all doing well. And her friends just meant the world to her. Pammy, and Pam was always Pammy to me, not Pamela. Pammy.
Well, thank you for sticking around. It's a long ceremony with a lot of love for my mother and what everyone said. Rita wants to say thanks for coming and celebrating her life, her long life. Last time I saw my mother was on her birthday, July 29. I didn't know it was going to be the last day for me to see her, but I ran over to hospice with some matzo ball soup, because every Friday she loved the Shabbos dinner at Stone Gardens. So I picked up some matzo ball soup. I baked a cake, which unfortunately was too hot for me to take to her. And I took her a bouquet of flowers. And I went in and I fed my mother matzo ball soup. And I gave her a spoonful, and then I would step 6 feet back and gave her a spoonful and step back. I probably looked like I was out of my mind, but I was told not to spend too much time close to her. Well, how are you not supposed to spend time close to your mother, who was probably dying? But I did what I had to do. And unfortunately, the next day, when I thought I would take her that cake, and I found out my husband had COVID, and then I came down with COVID. So I called my brothers and said, I can't go there and take her. God forbid another variant. So that was the last time I saw my mother. When I was a child, my mother told me the legends of our family, stories passed down from her mother and her mother's mother. Listen closely, she said. Let me whisper in your ear. With every pause, I heard echoes of voices, lifting me higher and higher. We will protect you as you face the winds of life. Close your eyes. Imagine you are walking in a garden of rose petals, following in the footsteps of our tribe. Let the shade cool you as you lie under the willow tree. Breathe. 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 Let your thoughts ride every current, every wave. You may feel pain. Just take a tumble. Run and jump. Then rise up, dear daughter. We are women of strength and courage. Your great-grandmother, mother of 8, squeezing the dough in her hands, who stood by the old oven in the shtetl, waiting for the dough to rise. Your grandmother, a seamstress, huddled over her treadle sewing machine, pushing her foot on the pedal, down, then up, then down again, seeking a better life in America. Join me in my kitchen and help me make a mix. I have many secrets to share. Turn up the heat, dear daughter. Let's have a cup of tea. Roll out the fabric. Just press out the wrinkles with your hands. Take a peek inside my sewing box and touch every thread of life. Feel every pin in my mother's cushion. And tell me, what's on your mind? Remember, my dear daughter, don't forget to unwind. Let's dress up for the party. Just give me some time to sit at the makeup table, where I like to make an outline. What are we doing today? Let's go for a ride. Lately, I've been wondering, what is up in the sky? Tonight, I think I will wrap myself in colors. Pale pink, yellow, or powder blue. I think it's time for me to rest. So carry on, my dear daughter. Don't worry about me. I'll be wearing cotton, satin, silk, or linen. Or be dressed in that old terry cloth robe. Just carry on, my dear daughter. Live it up. Someday we'll meet again.
Thank you for your beautiful reminiscences and your evocation of a very special woman.
Mass cancer singer.
I invite you to rise. שוכן במרומים, המצא מנוחה נכונה, תחת כנפי השכינה, איים קדושים וטהורים, כזרע רקיע מזהירים, את נשמת רחל בת פשע וענה, שהלכה לעולמה. בעל הרחמים יסתיריה בסתר כנפיו לעולמים, ויצרו החיים את נשמתה. אדוני הוא נחלתה ותנוח בשלום על משכבה ונאמר אמן. Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to Rita A. Heller, who has entered eternity. O God of mercy, let her find refuge in your eternal presence, and let her soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is her inheritance. May she rest in peace. And let us say, Amen. O God, help us to understand that grief and love go hand in hand, that the pain which loss inflicts is the measure of a love stronger than death, that we cry in the anguish of our hearts. May we be like children who know that their parent is near and who cling unafraid to the trusted hand. In this spirit, O God, do we commit all that is precious to us to your keeping as we recite now the words hallowed by generations of our people in the Kaddish praise. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah, v'alma yivrach yiduteh, v'yamlich malchuteh, v'chayechon of yomechon, ובחיי וכל בית ישראל, בעגלה בזמן קריב ואמרו, אמן. יהי שמי רבה מברך לעולם עולמי עלמיה. יתברך וישתבח, יתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, יתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקדושה וייחוד. לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דאמירן בעלמא, ואמרו אמן. יהי שלמה רבה מן שמיה וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו amen. Lech kishilachacha Adonai, go your way for God has called you. Lech v'Adonai yeh imach, go your way and may God be with you. V'halach lefanecha tzidkecha, kavod Adonai ya'asvecha. May your righteousness go before you, and the glory of God receive you. And we say to the mourners, Hamakom yenachem etchem b'tov she'ar avei Tzion v'Yerushalayim. May God console you with all who mourn in Zion and Jerusalem. I now invite, let me just back up. It is part of the tradition of our people to help to bury our departed with our very own hands. And for those for whom it may have meaning to place a symbolic shovelful of dirt upon the gravesite, I will invite you to do so at this time, but let us do it in the following way. The immediate family, those who wish, why don't you come this way, and then move out to your cars so that you may return to Pam's home, and then we'll pause, allow the family to continue to leave, and anyone who wishes to remain to do so may at that time.
Here, let me get it for you.
I don't know how to do the getting it out from under it, so I guess if you do both sides, we'll hold the straps to